I still remember the exact moment I held that invitation letter in my hands. The crisp white paper, the gold embossed logo of the Geneva Environmental Research Institute, and those words that made my heart race. We are pleased to invite you to the final interview round for our International Scholarship Program. 4 years of sleepless nights, 3 part-time jobs, and countless sacrifices had led to this single piece of paper. I was about to become the first person in my family to study abroad. What I did not know was that the person closest to me was already planning to destroy everything I had worked for. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. And if you believe that hard work should never be stolen by jealousy, stay with me until the end, because this story might feel painfully familiar. My name is Marcus, and I grew up in a small house in Columbus, Ohio. Our family of 4 lived a modest life. My father worked as an electrician, coming home every evening with calloused hands and a tired smile. My mother worked part-time as a nurse at the local clinic, always juggling shifts to make sure someone was home when we got back from school. Then there was my older sister, Lucy, who was 27 years old, 3 years older than me. From the very beginning, Lucy was the princess of our household. When she was young, she suffered from frequent bouts of illness. Nothing serious, but enough to make my parents wrap her in an invisible blanket of protection that never seemed to fade. Even after she grew healthy and strong, that protective instinct remained. Lucy was delicate. Lucy needed extra care. Lucy came first. I learned early on that my role in this family was different. I was the one who could handle things on his own. I was the low-maintenance child, the one who never complained, the one who figured things out without asking for help. And for the longest time, I accepted this role without question. When Lucy graduated from high school, my parents bought her a brand new Honda Civic. I remember the day they surprised her with it. The red bow on the hood, her squeals of delight, the proud looks on my parents' faces. When I graduated 2 years later, I worked double shifts at the grocery store for 8 months to buy a used Ford with 120,000 miles on it. My parents said they were proud of my independence. College was the same story. Lucy's tuition was paid in full by our parents. They said it was an investment in her future. When it was my turn, my father sat me down and explained that money was tight, that they had already stretched themselves thin for Lucy, that I was smart enough to figure out scholarships and loans. So I did. I applied to every scholarship I could find, took out student loans, and worked 3 jobs throughout my 4 years at Ohio State University. I want to be clear about something. I never resented my parents for this. At least not consciously. I told myself that their favoritism had made me stronger, more resilient, more capable. I believed that every obstacle they placed in my path was actually a gift in disguise. Looking back now, I realize I was just telling myself whatever I needed to hear to survive. My passion for environmental science began during a field trip in my sophomore year of high school. Our biology class visited the shores of Lake Erie, and what I saw there changed me forever. The water that should have been crystal clear was murky with algae blooms. Dead fish lined the shore. Our teacher explained that decades of agricultural runoff and industrial pollution had created these toxic conditions. That day, standing on that polluted shore, I made a decision. I would dedicate my life to understanding and solving these problems. I would become someone who could make a real difference. At Ohio State, I threw myself into my studies with everything I had. While other students partied on weekends, I was in the library or the lab. I worked as a server at an Italian restaurant 3 nights a week. I was a teaching assistant for introductory biology courses. I did an unpaid internship at a water quality research lab, waking up at 5 in the morning to collect samples before my classes started. By my senior year, my GPA was 3.97. I had co-authored 2 published research papers on freshwater contamination. My professor, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a renowned environmental scientist, took me under her wing. She was the one who first mentioned the Geneva Scholarship. "Marcus," she said one afternoon in her office, The Geneva Environmental Research Institute offers a fully funded research position for exceptional young scientists. The competition is brutal, 10 spots for applicants from around the world. But your work on the Great Lakes Project is exactly what they are looking for. You should apply. The application process took 6 months. I wrote and rewrote my personal statement 17 times. I compiled research portfolios, gathered recommendation letters, and prepared a detailed proposal for my intended research. Every night, after my restaurant shift, I would come home to my tiny apartment and work on the application until my eyes could not stay open anymore. When the email arrived saying I had been selected for the final interview round, I literally fell to my knees. Out of thousands of applicants worldwide, only 10 remained. The interview would be held in Zurich, Switzerland, and if selected, I would receive a scholarship worth $250,000, covering tuition, research funding, and living expenses for 3 years. I immediately called home to share the news. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. "Hello?" My mother's voice was distracted, like she was in the middle of something else. "Mom, I got it. I made it to the final round for the Geneva Scholarship. I am going to Switzerland for the interview." There was a pause. "Oh, that is nice, honey. Hold on. Your father wants to say something." My father came on the line. "Hey, son. Congratulations. That sounds like a big deal." His voice was flat, almost dismissive. "Listen, have you talked to your sister lately? She is going through a rough time at work. Maybe you could give her a call." I felt something sink in my chest, but I pushed it away. "Sure, Dad. I will call her." Later that day, I did call Lucy. She answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, Lucy. I just wanted to share some good news. I got into the final round for that international scholarship I applied for. I am flying to Switzerland next month for the interview." Silence. "Then how much is it worth?" The question caught me off guard. About $250,000 total. It covers everything for 3 years." More silence. When Lucy finally spoke again, her voice had an edge I could not quite identify. "Must be nice to have everything handed to you." I almost laughed at the irony. "Handed to me, Lucy? I worked 3 jobs for 4 years to pay for college. I spent 6 months on this application alone." "Whatever. Some people are just born lucky, I guess." She hung up before I could respond. I should have paid more attention to that conversation. I should have recognized the bitterness in her voice for what it was. But I was too excited, too focused on the opportunity ahead of me. I told myself Lucy was just having a bad day. The interview was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in Zurich. I booked my flights weeks in advance, Columbus to New York, then New York to Zurich, arriving on Monday to give myself time to rest and prepare. I planned everything down to the smallest detail. I bought a new suit, practiced my presentation hundreds of times, and researched every member of the interview panel. 3 days before my flight, I decided to stay at my parents' house in Columbus. It would save me the cost of a hotel near the airport, and some small part of me still hoped that my family might want to see me off to wish me luck, to act like this moment mattered. I arrived on Saturday evening with my suitcase, my laptop bag, and a folder containing all my important documents. I had checked and rechecked everything multiple times: passport, visa, flight itinerary, invitation letter from the Institute. Everything was in order. I placed the folder in the bottom drawer of the desk in my old childhood bedroom and locked it with a small key I kept on my keychain. That first night at home felt strange. Dinner was quiet, with my parents asking about the weather in Switzerland and whether I had packed warm clothes. Lucy barely looked at me. She pushed food around her plate and excused herself early, saying she had a headache. On Sunday, something shifted. Lucy suddenly became friendly, almost too friendly. She knocked on my bedroom door in the morning with a cup of coffee. "Hey, little brother. I wanted to apologize for being weird on the phone the other day. I have been stressed with work stuff, but I am really proud of you, you know?" I was so surprised that I just stood there, holding the coffee, unsure how to respond. "So tell me about the trip," she continued, settling onto the edge of my bed. "When do you fly out? What airline are you taking? Do you need someone to drive you to the airport?" I should have found it suspicious that she had never shown this much interest in my life before. But I was desperate for her approval, desperate to believe that my family actually cared. So I told her everything: the flight times, the airline, the hotel I had booked in Zurich. "That sounds amazing. Lucy said, her eyes wandering around my room. Hey, do you still have that old copy of To Kill a Mockingbird? I have been wanting to reread it. Yeah, it should be on the bookshelf somewhere. She walked over to the shelf, which was right next to the desk where I had stored my documents. I cannot find it. Mind if I look around a bit? Sure, go ahead. She spent several minutes searching through my things, pulling out books, opening drawers. At one point, I saw her glance at the locked bottom drawer. What is in here? Just some important documents, passport and stuff for the trip. She nodded and eventually left with a different book, claiming she could not find the one she wanted. I did not think anything of it at the time. That night, I woke up around 2 in the morning to use the bathroom. As I walked down the dark hallway, I could have sworn I heard footsteps near my room. I paused listening, but the house was silent. I told myself I was imagining things, that pre-interview nerves were making me paranoid. Monday morning arrived, the day before my flight. I woke up early, my stomach tight with anticipation. I wanted to go through my documents one final time to make sure everything was perfect. I pulled out my keychain and unlocked the bottom drawer of the desk. The folder was there. My flight itinerary was there. My invitation letter was there. My passport was gone. For a moment, I could not process what I was seeing. I stared at the empty space where my passport should have been, my brain refusing to accept reality. Then the panic hit. I tore through the drawer, then the entire desk. I searched my suitcase, my laptop bag, my coat pockets. I looked under the bed, behind the furniture, in places a passport could never logically be. My hands were trembling. Cold sweat dripped down my back. Mom, Dad! I ran downstairs, my voice cracking with desperation. They were in the kitchen having breakfast. Lucy was there too, calmly eating toast. What is wrong? My mother asked, looking alarmed by my expression. My passport is gone. It was in my desk in a locked drawer, and now it is gone. I cannot find it anywhere. My father frowned. Are you sure you brought it? Maybe you left it at your apartment. No, I checked it when I got here. It was there on Saturday night. Someone took it. That is ridiculous, my mother said. Who would take your passport? I looked at Lucy. She was watching me with an expression I could not read, her toast frozen halfway to her mouth. Are you sure you did not just misplace it, Marcus? You have always been a bit scattered when you get stressed. Something in her voice made my blood run cold, but I pushed the suspicion away. Surely my own sister would not do this to me. I spent the next several hours in a frantic blur. I called the airline to see if I could fly with alternative identification. No, they said. International flights require a valid passport. I called the U.S. passport office. Emergency passports take at least 24 to 48 hours, and that is if you can get an appointment, which I could not. I called the interview coordinator in Geneva, begging them to reschedule. I am so sorry, Marcus, the coordinator said, her voice genuinely sympathetic. The panel is only assembled for this one day. We have candidates flying in from 6 different countries. There is simply no way to reschedule. I hung up the phone and sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the wreckage of my desperate search. 4 years of work, 6 months of preparation, $250,000. My entire future, gone. I do not know how long I sat there on that floor. Minutes, maybe hours. The shock had given way to a dull, throbbing numbness that spread through my entire body. At some point, I became aware of a thought pushing its way through the fog in my brain. The camera. During my freshman year of college, my laptop had been stolen from my dorm room. After that, I had bought a small, inconspicuous security camera that I kept on my bookshelf, hidden among some old trophies. It was a habit I had maintained ever since, a small precaution that I barely thought about anymore. But now, sitting on that floor, I remembered that I had set it up in this room when I arrived on Saturday. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. I scrolled back through the footage, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Saturday, nothing unusual. Me unpacking, me checking my documents, me going to bed. Saturday night, 11:47 p.m. Me turning off the lights. Sunday, 2:14 a.m. The door to my room slowly opening. I watched as a figure crept into the frame. Even in the grainy night vision footage, there was no mistaking who it was. Lucy, still in her pajamas, moving with careful, deliberate steps. She walked straight to my desk. She bent down and examined the locked drawer for a moment, then pulled something out of her pocket, a paperclip bent into a makeshift picking tool. Within seconds, the drawer was open. I watched my sister remove my passport from the folder. I watched her close the drawer, lock it again, and slip out of the room as silently as she had entered. The footage was 37 seconds long. 37 seconds that captured the destruction of everything I had built. Something broke inside me in that moment. Not my spirit, not my determination. Something else. The last fragile thread of belief that my family loved me unconditionally. I found them in the living room. Lucy was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. My parents were watching television. A normal Monday afternoon in the household, as if nothing had happened, as if their son's life had not just been shattered. "Lucy," my voice came out steady, much steadier than I expected. "You took my passport." She looked up, her expression carefully neutral. "What are you talking about?" "I have it on video. You came into my room at 2 a.m. on Sunday. You picked the lock on my desk drawer. You took my passport." The color drained from her face. My parents turned from the television, confusion slowly transforming into something else. "That is a serious accusation, Marcus," my father said. "You cannot just accuse your sister of—" I held up my phone and pressed play. The room went silent except for the soft sounds from the video. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's jaw tightened. Lucy stared at the screen, and for a moment I saw real fear in her eyes. When the video ended, nobody spoke. "Lucy," my mother finally said, did you really?" And then Lucy burst into tears. "You do not understand," she sobbed, her whole body shaking. "You have no idea what it is like being me. Marcus has always been the smart one, the successful one. Everyone always talks about how brilliant Marcus is, how he is going to do great things. And what about me? I am 27 years old, and I am still stuck in the same dead-end job, still living in the same town, still being compared to my perfect little brother." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "For once, I wanted you to know what it feels like, to have something you want taken away from you, to know that sometimes life is not fair." I stood there, waiting for my parents to respond, waiting for them to tell Lucy that what she did was wrong, that stealing someone's passport was a crime that she might have just destroyed my entire career. My mother spoke first. "Oh, Lucy, honey." She moved to the couch and wrapped her arms around my sister. "I had no idea you were feeling this way. You must be under so much stress." I blinked, certain I had misheard. "Mom?" "She stole my passport. I am going to miss the most important interview of my life." My father stood up and faced me. His expression was not angry at Lucy. It was annoyed at me. "Marcus, your sister is clearly going through something. She needs our support right now." "She needs support, Dad? Do you understand what she did? This scholarship could have changed my life. It could have changed everything." My father sighed, and when he spoke, his voice had the tone of a man explaining something obvious to a child. "Some opportunities are not meant for everyone, Marcus. Maybe this is a sign that you should stay closer to home. Family is what matters, not some fancy school on the other side of the world." I looked at my mother, hoping she would say something different. She just held Lucy tighter and gave me a helpless shrug, as if to say, "What can you do?" In that moment, I understood something I had been avoiding my entire life. I was not part of this family. I had never been. I was an afterthought, a supporting character in the story of Lucy's life. Every sacrifice I had made, every achievement I had earned, every obstacle I had overcome meant nothing to them. I walked out of that living room without another word. I heard my mother calling after me, asking where I was going, but I did not stop. I grabbed my suitcase from my bedroom, my laptop bag, the folder with my remaining documents. I left the front door open behind me. It was raining when I got to my car. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, watching the water stream down the windshield, and let myself cry. I cried for the little boy who just wanted his parents to be proud of him. I cried for all the years I spent making excuses for their favoritism. I cried for the future I thought I had lost. And then I stopped crying, because through the pain I remembered something. I remembered sitting in Dr. Warren's office 2 months ago discussing contingency plans for the interview. Always have a backup plan, Marcus, she had said. In research in life, always have a backup plan. I drove to a quiet parking lot and pulled out my laptop. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was starting to clear. Here is what my family did not know, what nobody knew except Dr. Warren and myself. 3 weeks before my interview date, I had contacted the Geneva Institute to discuss alternative arrangements. The original motivation was mundane. I was worried about winter weather, potentially delaying my flights. But I had asked the question, if circumstances prevented me from attending in person, would virtual participation be possible? The coordinator had been understanding. Given the quality of my application and the unpredictable nature of international travel, they had agreed to hold a backup option. If I encountered a genuine emergency, I could request to complete my interview via video conference. I had never imagined I would actually need to use this backup. I had never imagined that the emergency would come from inside my own family. Sitting in that parking lot, rain drumming on the roof of my car, I composed the most important email of my life. I explained that I had encountered an unforeseen document emergency that prevented me from traveling. I did not go into details about what had really happened. I simply asked if the video conference option was still available. Then I waited. 23 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Dear Marcus, the email read, we are sorry to hear about your situation. Given the strength of your application and the committee's interest in your research, we are prepared to offer you a video interview slot. Please confirm your availability for a 10 a.m. Zurich time connection tomorrow. I read the email 3 times before I trusted that it was real. Then I booked a room at a hotel near the university, showered, put on my suit, and prepared for the interview of my life. I barely slept that night. Part of it was nerves about the interview, but part of it was something else, a strange sensation of freedom. For the first time in my life, I was truly on my own. No family to disappoint, no expectations to manage. Just me and the opportunity in front of me. The interview began at 4 a.m. Columbus time. I sat in the hotel room in my suit and tie laptop, positioned carefully to show a neutral background notes organized just out of frame. When the video connected and I saw the 5 members of the interview panel looking back at me from Geneva, I felt a calmness settle over me. I had prepared for this moment for 6 months. I knew my research inside and out. I believed in the work I wanted to do. For the next 90 minutes, I talked about freshwater ecosystems and agricultural pollution. I explained my research on the Great Lakes and how it could be applied to environmental challenges in Europe. I answered questions about methodology, about collaboration, about my long-term vision for my career. I spoke with passion and precision, drawing on everything I had learned and experienced. When it was over, the panel chair smiled. Thank you, Marcus. That was one of the most impressive interviews we have conducted. We will be in touch. The 2 weeks that followed were the longest of my life. I went back to my apartment, went back to my jobs, and tried not to think about what was happening in Geneva. I did not contact my family. They called and texted repeatedly, but I did not respond. I had nothing left to say to them. On a Tuesday afternoon, I was shelving books at my library job when my phone buzzed with an email notification. Dear Marcus, it began. On behalf of the Geneva Environmental Research Institute, I am delighted to inform you that you have been selected as one of 3 recipients of the International Scholarship for Environmental Research. I read those words standing in the middle of the library, surrounded by students in silence, and felt tears streaming down my face again. But these were different tears. 2 weeks later, the Institute held a virtual award ceremony. As a local interest story, the Columbus television station picked it up. Local student wins prestigious international scholarship, the headline read. They interviewed me in front of the science building on campus. Marcus, what would you say to young people who are facing obstacles in pursuing their dreams? The reporter asked. I looked directly into the camera. I would say that the people who truly support you will show it through their actions, not their words. And sometimes the biggest obstacles come from the places you least expect. But if you know your own worth, no one can take your destination away from you. I learned later that my family was watching. They saw me standing there in my suit, holding the scholarship certificate, talking about overcoming obstacles. My phone exploded with messages. My mother cried and apologized. My father sent a long email admitting he had been wrong. Lucy wrote that she was getting help, seeing a therapist, working on herself. I did not respond that day, or the next day, or the day after that. Geneva. In autumn is beautiful in a way that feels almost unreal. The lake reflects the mountains like a mirror, and the air carries a crispness that makes everything feel possible. I arrived 3 months after that rainy night in Columbus, carrying 2 suitcases and a heart still heavy with wounds that had not yet healed. The first months were harder than I expected. The research was exhilarating, the opportunities beyond anything I had imagined. But late at night, alone in my small apartment, the pain would find me. I would lie awake wondering what I had done to make my parents love me less than Lucy. I would replay that scene in the living room, searching for something I could have said or done differently. I found a therapist through the university, a kind Swiss woman named Dr. Muller, who helped me understand that some questions do not have answers. Some pain is not meant to be explained, only processed and eventually released. I also found a new family of sorts. My roommate, a researcher from Brazil named Carlos, became one of my closest friends. We cooked terrible dinners together in our tiny kitchen and stayed up late discussing our work and our lives. I met colleagues from Japan, Nigeria, Sweden, and Australia. People who shared my passion for protecting the planet and who valued me for exactly who I was. 6 months after I arrived in Geneva, I finally answered my mother's call. "Marcus," she said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "I am so sorry. Your father and we were wrong. We were so wrong." I listened as she apologized, as she tried to explain years of favoritism she was only now beginning to understand. She told me that Lucy was in therapy, working through the jealousy and resentment that had poisoned her for so long. "We want to make things right," my mother said. "We want to be a family again." I was quiet for a long moment. "I appreciate you saying that, Mom. I really do. And I forgive you. All of you." "Oh, Marcus." But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean things go back to the way they were. I need you to understand that. The conversation that followed was difficult but necessary. I explained that I would maintain contact, but at a distance I felt comfortable with. I would not pretend that the past had not happened. I would not rush to rebuild trust that had taken 24 years to destroy. It has been a year now since I left Columbus. My research is going well. I have published 2 more papers and presented at conferences in 3 countries. I have friends who feel more like family than my family ever did. I have a life I built with my own hands from the ruins of everything I once believed. Sometimes I think about what Lucy did and I no longer feel anger. I feel something closer to pity. She was so consumed by jealousy that she could not see how her actions defined her, not me. She tried to steal my passport, but all she really stole was her own peace of mind. And my parents, they taught me the most valuable lesson of all, even if it was not the lesson they intended. They taught me that love should never have to be earned. That a family that only supports you when it is convenient is not a family at all. That sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. If you are watching this, and you have felt unseen by the people who were supposed to love you most, I want you to know something. Your worth is not determined by their blindness. Your future is not limited by their lack of vision. You have the power to build a life so beautiful that their rejection becomes nothing more than a footnote in your story. Some people will try to steal your passport to your dreams. They will hide your opportunities, dismiss your achievements, and tell you that some things are not meant for everyone. But as long as you know your own worth, as long as you keep moving forward, no one can ever take away your destination. Tonight, I am standing in my office at the Institute, looking out at the Alps turning pink in the sunset. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. And I got here not because of my family, but in spite of them. That is my story. If it resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had someone close to you try to sabotage your dreams? How did you overcome it? Drop your answers in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel so you do not miss the next story. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. And wherever you are in your journey, I hope you never stop believing in yourself. Your dreams are worth fighting for. Until next time, take care of yourselves.